Okay. So the question that I want to answer before it gets asked is, Professor Rosen, is there a curve? And the answer is yes, there is a curve. Let me go ahead and, so once again, here's the questions that we're, the list of questions we'll have most likely. Definitely, the only thing that I'm not sure about is what the identity of this question will be. We'll be sure to go over some practice problems on at the very least Thursday, probably Tuesday as well. I plan on focusing on applying regex to the homework and an example problem we had that I've given in other final exams in the past. Okay, so the question is, what about the curve? So let's go ahead and do that. So first off, the minimum grade to get a C or better is 70 in this class, just in general. I don't, generally, and that's just generally held consistent. I don't hand out C minuses. In fact, the minuses I kind of have a philosophical disagreement with because of the lack of an A plus. Seems really silly if there's an A minus but not an A plus. But that's one university. That varies from one university to the other. So anyway, if you check my syllabus, I have something spelled out that says, hey, if an A will be greater than or equal to, if you get a greater than or if your score is, greater than or equal to 90, then you're going to get an A. And I don't, and that's not an A minus or anything. 90 and above, your raw score, if you have a raw score of a 90 or above, you'll get an A. Similarly, if you've got greater than or equal to an 80, at minimum, you're getting a B. They're not B minus or anything like that. Similarly, 70 or above. I mean, and part of the reason I did this is because where I went for my undergrad, there were no plus or minus system. There was just simply A, B, C, or D. What about D's and F's? Let's cover F first. The only way to get an F in this course is to basically, let's see, cheat, give up, not turn in stuff. Basically, if you don't turn in your homework, don't make an effort. And then basically, then you get an F. So as long as you make an effort, I'm more than happy to give a D. You'll have learned something, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the metric I use for a D. You learned something, but weren't able to make an achievable grade. So minimum score, if you're pretty much sitting in this room right now, is a D. And this has to do with a variety of reasons, issues that I've had in the past with the financial aid office when I've assigned students Fs. So, and then them having contradictory instructions on how I report the last date a student was seen, so so now I just don't bother with that. So now what I do is with the A minuses is that those are typically used for falling in between the A's and B's. Last semester, an A minus was I think an 88.7 and above. That was the cutoff for an A minus. So here's what I do. I do it basically in the most reasonable way possible. When I'm done, when I've graded all the final exams and everything's in, I sort your grades from highest to lowest. I don't look at who it is. I just simply sort your grades from highest to lowest and look at just the grade, the final grade. Okay? And here's what I do. I basically say, okay, I look at where the 90s are, and I'll see scores like this: 90.1. I'll see and then I'll see in like a 89.9, 95, 89, point, 83, 89.57, and then maybe and this is just an example because I typically have a bit of a cluster there. If I see, and then the next, but what I look for is this event happening, where there's basically a significant cluster, cutoff between these two grades, where there's so here we have almost a 1.5 difference between these two grades. So basically, the thing is there's not really a significant difference between these two grades, nor these two grades, nor these two grades. And that's where I look for it. And it typically happens around the 88 point. And then I basically say this line, anything above this line, anything over here would be an A minus, and this naturally would be a B plus. Okay? So I try to be reasonable about it. Okay? That's the way it works. So basically, the curve extends the range. It basically it will bump you up from B into the A minus range. But if you get a 90 or above, great. So yeah, I do try. There really haven't been needs for like exceptional stuff, except for incompletes in the past. But if you need an incomplete, generally that's because of things like things I've seen for reasons that have been successful incompletes. Disaster, a literal disaster right at the end. So family death right at the end of the semester. Those points we have to document and verify them. Military deployments, or having to catch up from a military deployment like from the previous month, those kind of things. Those, basically emergencies. Generally, incompletes aren't something we are encouraged to give out because there's basically paperwork involved that we have to go through and handle. But yes, there is a curve for the class, but you do need to get a 70 or above to pass. But if you're trying, you get a D. D can count for credit for some electives, in some majors, I think. But it will not count as basically as for the grade you need to go on to the next class. All right. Any questions about that? All right. Let's also talk about the final project for a bit, just like turning it in and that kind of stuff. So if we go to Canvas, let's go over here. Hey, I don't know why I'm so tired. It's been a very busy week, but I've probably got plenty of sleep. Okay. At least for me, I know that once I'm done with this week, I'm probably in the clear. And on next Tuesday, I plan on giving a extra credit quiz in class, just like the extra credit quiz we gave at the beginning of the semester. So, I'd appreciate if you would be there for class so you could get the chance to do that. Extra credit's always good, and it's the kind of extra credit where you get credit just for doing it. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at at what we need for turning in the final project. I'll obviously have to revisit this on Thursday because I'll get the same questions, but over here, in reality, what we need is so first off, if I mark you down for a 0 on the final project or any part of the final project, but somebody else turned it in, don't panic. Just let me know. I promise it will get corrected. It happens. But ideally, just submit a link to the GitHub repo. If you want to be extra cautious about it, just, then all of your group members can turn in the same link, to the same repo. We only need one repo. But at the very least, what we would like you to do is just simply submit and mention, who your partners were, because, so that everybody can get credit. So basically, what you're going to be turning in is your GitHub repo where your code is hosted. So that will be due Monday at midnight, hard deadline. technically Monday, 11:59. Hard deadline means it's the same late penalty that we use for exams, okay? 1.1 minute, minute. So every minute is a tenth of a point late, so, okay. Now, here's the part that we're going to use to so the next day I use this part to evaluate your final project. You must also submit a 1 to 2 minute video detailing your project. That's ideal because I have a lot of final projects to go through. And so the only way I can go through and fairly look at them is by looking at your video presentations. This is not the same as a demo where you're going to be showing me the code. I want you to show me the product, okay? You can upload it to Canvas. A lot of people end up loading it onto YouTube because YouTube is great at just simply taking any kind of video file, and that's great. If you have trouble, if you're not sure how to make a video, the easiest way, if you have no prior knowledge, is to open up Zoom, share your screen, and make a recording of that. It's all built into Zoom to be able to do that. It's fairly painless to be able to do it that way. Obviously, when you give that link, you'll also want to give us that URL so we can watch the video. No video equals no grade until you give me that video. So I'm not going to give you a 0 because you didn't turn it in. If you forgot to link me it will be a 0 until you send it to me. Okay? So again, being reasonable here. Right? Your video should be a walkthrough of your program, slides, screenshots, a voiceover and or live action, just depending on what kind of thing. Why would it be live action? If you made some kind of hardware, that's why. Your video should somehow include your project's title. Generally, though, taking your camera and trying to record your screen like that, that's it's a very unprofessional way of showing stuff on your screen, okay? Take the 5 minutes it takes to learn how to use Zoom to record your own screen. Okay? Upload your video, so your video should include your project's title, your year, your name, and any other details you'd like to convey. Upload your video to YouTube as public or unlisted, or you could do it to Canvas, and include the URL of the video, basically in your README file, and in Canvas, basically make sure we can get it. Your video is a general overview of the final product. Include anything you want to say, such as the difficulties you faced or overcame, the things you learned, what you enjoyed, etc. in the README file. Okay, the general overview is what I'm going to be looking at, and that's going to basically help me look at that. I'm going to look at the README file generally to kind of help me figure out tiebreakers and stuff. Okay, we're really interested in what kind of challenges you encountered while coding and if you found the way to overcome them. If, not how. We don't assume that you were able to go to beat every obstacle in your path. We also understand it may not have been possible to do what you originally planned. We're interested in how you responded to that, how you pivoted, how you responded in the face of adversity. We are interested in your journey, not your destination. We are interested not on where you ended up, but what path you took to get there. So the guidelines for an A in general is that it amuses me for a minute, and I'm a very easily amused person. It amazes me, makes a positive impact on the world, no matter how small. So I'm not trying to set the guidelines too hard for getting a 90 here, okay? Once again, the best final projects do get to be exempt from the final exam. That's why I try to sit down on Tuesday to try to get that knowledge out to everybody as soon as possible so that people can know, oh, I don't need to study for that, okay? As far as when the final exam is, again, we can pull up this calendar over here. Once again, we look at the 3 credit hour courses over here. Even though this is a 4 credit hour, our lab is counted as separate than the lecture. So we look over here for the 2 to 3:20, which means it's on Tuesday, 12/19. Okay, so it's not that first week. Yeah, I know, I hate it too. It's not that first week, it's that second week. Now some of you are thinking to yourself, okay, so I have plenty of time to study. And the answer is, yes, but you're going to be busy studying for all the other stuff in between that, and you also are going to just be kind of exhausted by that point. In my past, for 2168, the 2168 exam, final exam, had a reputation for being hard because it was always 3:30 on that Tuesday, which meant that it was just, and that's like the second to last day, I think. Yeah, I think that might be what? No, that is literally the last day of finals. So, in the last slot for at least for 2168. This is the second to last slot, so you've kind of... So yeah, plenty extra time to study, but okay? It's a pain. I end up grading pretty much all the finals directly, so myself, not the TAs, because the amount of turnaround that would have to occur is annoying. Again, if you have any issues with the grading the TAs did for Exam 2, please send it to me. I will be getting into it this weekend. I've got assessments that I'm writing up for various degree programs we've got here. Those are due tomorrow. And then basically my calendar is finally free, except for this class, but you understand what I mean. It means I can finally give my full attention. This week has been very crazy. Okay, so from 2 to 3:20, Tuesday, Thursday. So 2 to 3:20, Tuesday is here. Yes, it's 12:19 at 1 o'clock. Also worth mentioning is that this is important for your other classes. If you have the same exam that day, I am not really going to remove you. Sorry about that. If 2 exams on one day is totally doable. 3 exams or more, we actually have a line written in here. Instructors are encouraged to work out individual accommodations with students who have more than 2 examinations scheduled in one day. That means that if you have 3 exams in one day, one of your instructors is supposed to accommodate you and give it to you at a different time. If I'm that instructor, I'm more than happy to do that for you. But you should figure that out this week. If you've got multiple conflicts. The other thing you want to know is that for anybody who's got one of these listed classes over here, is that you want to check out if you have a common final. All common finals are 3:30 to 5:50. 3:30 to 5:30. The only CIS classes are 1166 and 3223 that are common. So none of these classes, but keep that in mind. And those will generally that might be held in a different room than your normal room. For us, of course, we will be holding it in this room. So now we've got a decision to make, okay? Which is the format of the final exam. Okay. So as far as the final exam is concerned, I have 2 ways I can give it, because we'll be in this room. First is we can do it just like we've done the other exams, which is electronically, okay? We give it electronically, just like the other ones. The content, and by the way, the content won't change between these choices. You can give it electronically, and same restrictions, open note, open book, be able to reference stuff. The other thing we can do is that I can print it out and give it on paper and have you write that. Same questions, and you might be wondering why would I want to do that? Why in the world? That sounds like a terrible idea. And the answer is that because it's a lot quicker for you to write it on paper, believe it or not. Yes, it is, because even though you might be able to type faster and type cleaner, it takes, once you start getting errors and syntax errors in your program, you back up, you have to fix them. That's why I only ask 5 or 7 questions on an exam. A very small amount of questions, because it takes a long time for errors to get fixed. Whereas on paper, it's a lot quicker, and if you make a spelling mistake, the paper doesn't care. That's why. Is there anyone who would prefer paper? No, everybody's very comfortable with using it electronically. Okay, I thought so. I prefer electronic, if for only the reasons of being able to not hand back stuff and being able to check, the grading goes a lot quicker on electronics. Okay. All right. So give me a second. I'm going to pause this recording so that I can unpause now and then I can unmute. Sorry about that. I just wanted to keep my stuff as basically these URLs. I'll be sending you stuff to as not secret, but basically obfuscated. So question. So this was this was the file reading question or this was the file reading question from last semester's final exam, which was actually fairly straightforward. Here's a list of scores featuring Mario characters, of course, and I basically and the question. So here was a list of scores. Please tell me who had the highest score, right? So that's not and that's just basic. This was basically a test file, and I would tell you, okay, you should report that Mario had a score of 97. It's not going to be too much more difficult than this for the file reading question, reporting who had the highest score or what was the sum of things, right? You got an idea of that. It was slightly more difficult on exam 2 than this question, but the exams are fairly straightforward. Now, how would we do this question? It's, again, not a very particularly difficult one. I guess we'll start doing a final exam review today. Why not? Okay, so myonreview.py. Okay, so of course, you could use import CSV. I'm not even going to bother because I didn't teach that in class. I'm just going to read a file like normal. Def find highest, assuming I can spell, highest score. And then so when I'm doing a file reading question, I always like to do it in this format for my answer, at least, which is that I create the name of the function, okay, and then I give it the file name, right? So it's easy to test for me, at least, okay. And then what we're trying to do. So again, what is this? What is the question? Here's the file. Please tell me which of names and what they scored. Please tell me what they score. Who scored the highest thing. Of course, in the exam, I have it much more formally written. Like here's a list of names. A file separate of pairs separated by commas. The left, the first column is names. The second column is scores. Please tell me which name got the highest score. Of course, when I'm talking about like this, I can talk about it much more casually. And it's not. And then generally the rubric is, I can even pull up the rubric. Why not? Why not? Pause. So unpausing now and unmuting the projector. So this is the final exam over here. So this is the question that I have. Suppose, it's edited Manx, sure. Edit a copy, yes. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this over into, I'll just drag this over here so that we can read it a bit better. And so that way I can have the rubric over here. So this was a 25-point question. Okay. So my question was, suppose and let me go ahead and turn on word wrap. Suppose you're playing a game which keeps track of each player's score and outputs it to a file. The file is made of multiple lines. Each line contains a player's name, followed by a comma, followed by the player's score. Write a function that takes in the file name as an argument and returns or prints which player had the highest score and what it was. And then, of course, I provide you with this. For this example file, and that was a link to this one, okay, I said, your function should report that Mario was the winner with a score of 97. And here's the rubric for that question. Okay, and I'll take this now over here. The grading, 5 points, reading the file. 5 points, iterating over the file. 5 points, handling each line. 5 points, keeping track of the winner. 5 points for returning or printing the answer. Okay, so we'll do that as the name over here. So again, this should also tell you, like, what is the strategy for tackling this. Okay, first thing I need to do for this question is I need to read the file. Okay, so I should do that with open file name and read, just there. And then to read the file, data. Now, that reads the file. That's 5 points right there. To iterate over it, that means that I have to go through it line by line somehow, or just go through the data in some way, shape, or form. That's going to involve a for loop somewhere, but basically you have two options. You can do read lines, or you have three options. You can do .read lines, or you can use for line in data, which is what I like to do, for line in data. And then if you write this, do something with the line. Congrats! You've just earned another 5 points. Believe it or not, pseudocode is something I will grade. Like that. Do something with the line. Okay. 5 points. So now we have to actually do that thing with the line, which is to handle each line. So what do we want to do with the line? Well, we need to figure out what the name is. So each line has a name, separated by a comma, separated by that number. So what we should do is that we should split that line into parts. Parts is equal to line dot split, and split on the comma. Right? Line dot split on the comma, and then the name is equal to parts 0, and the score is equal to parts 1. Everybody following so far? Hopefully this isn't going too fast. Right? Just simply read the line, split it up. Split is a very common operation. You should be very used to it right now. Name is equal to parts. Score is equal to parts 1. Okay? All right. So now what we want to do is, with that, is that we need to, so we've handled each line. Also, once we think about it for a second, or once we run into trouble later, we'll remember, wait a second, if I've got a number that I'm processing from a string, I should probably remember to turn it into an int. If you forget to do this, you'll get an error later on in the code, and you'll go back and fix it. No worries. You will get an error that will remind you to do this. Which is keeping track of the winner. We got to figure out who has the highest score. So we can go with winning score is equal to 0. Winning, and then we can have winner is equal to, you know what, why don't we call it winner and winner score. Winner score and winner is equal to blank. And this is fairly straightforward to do. If the score, and this is where you'd have that issue if you forgot to turn it into an integer. If your score is greater than the winner score, then congratulations. This person is the new winner because they have a better score. And their score now needs to be updated into score like this. Okay. There we go. And then print or return the result. I'll return winner and winner score. Just like that. Returning both the things there. And that knocks that out right there. We can test it by going who won Y and then putting in the file name score.csv. Now hopefully this won't be silly. Yep, it says no file name found. Score is because it's scores.csv first off. And there we go. And it ran and didn't do anything because of course I didn't print out anything. Very common mistake. One I even make now that was not an error. And there it goes. It says Mario 97. You can render it nicer if you want. I would leave that. I'd leave any rendering nicely until the end of the exam because it's not really going to make too much of a difference there. Okay. The one thing that I do want to know is I just want to check. Can I do this? Name, comma, score. I believe I can. I think it can. I just want to test. I always forget. Yes, you can do that. When you're splitting something into known quantities, you can do that. Python's smart. That's why. Python is smart, and it's like, okay, I've split it up. It has I've got a list over here with 2 variables on one side, and I've got a list with 2 items on one side, and I've got 2 variables on this side. So I'm just going to assign the first to the first, then the second to the second. Just kind of automatically figures that out. That's what goes on over here when you with your return statement. If I were to do this, notice it returns it as a tuple over there. If I were to say, if I were to do A, comma B equals who1y, it will automatically unpack that for me, and I can say A colon is the winner with comma B comma points. There you go, and just to unpack that automatically. All right. Like I've mentioned in the past, you can only return one thing from a function, but Python cheats and pretends it can return more than one thing, which is really nice. And I wish the other programming languages would get the memo. All right, let's talk about regex, which will also definitely be on the final exam. And let's see. So move that. So here I'm going to just simply show you the input-output pair and describe this problem from a previous semester. So the problem for here was, here's a file, okay? Here's a file with email addresses. I would like you to remove all the temple email addresses from it, okay? I'd like you to remove all the temple email addresses from it. We have not learned how to do this, but I think this is a very good kind of learning opportunity on how to do this. This is the kind of problem that we would like to do. It does, because it's going to require us to do 2 things, both read a file and write a file. I don't actually think I've covered how to write a file. It's not that hard, though. You're going to learn 2 more lines of code, one of which you already know. You just change the R in open to a W. That's line number 1. And the second thing is write. And that's it. Well, third. Okay, so we have this thing saying Professor Rosen's personal email is profandrewrosen@gmail.com. All emails sent to TUG at Temple or andrew.rosen@temple.edu are redirected there. That used to be true. They stopped me from being able to redirect, I believe. He is not TUZ12345@temple.edu, nor is his email TUF9999999@temple.edu, although it would be amusing if that were the case. And so what I want you to do is I want you to write a program that will be able to detect and remove all valid temple email addresses, okay? In other words, it will look like this. Your output file should look something like this. All emails sent to redacted or andrew.rosen. So not all, but specifically we're removing the TU email addresses. Got it? So anything that's a TU email address we want to remove. Professor Rosen, so notice that the andrew.rosen, which is your primary way of communicating with me, is not removed. And my Gmail address is not removed. This is to stop somebody from being silly and saying, I'm just going to replace the entire file with redacted, and be done. Which, if I didn't have that kind of specification, would be technically correct. All right, so how do you do this? Okay, so first off, and again, this is not so bad. But what I do is I provide you with an example input file and an example output file. And if your output matches my output file, right, then congrats, you've almost certainly scored all the points, unless, of course, you hard-coded everything in and just basically wrote a program that outputs this file, like just simply writes this file to the computer. It doesn't actually read anything. It just outputs this. That of course, will not get you credit. Import. RE. So the first thing we do when we're working with regular expressions is we import. Okay, and this kind of problem has basically two things we want to do. We need to read a file and we need to write a file. Basically, I want to read a file and I want to change all of one thing to all of another thing. Okay? So first off, let's focus on, and the rubric basically says this. Basically, read the file, 5 points for reading a file, 5 points for writing a file. And then and then another X amount, 5 points for like the regular expression and 5 points for changing everything. Okay? Something like that. So let's go over the stuff that, and again, when you're kind of like at a loss, you should go after the points you know you can get. Unfortunately, I can't write a test that doesn't just test your knowledge. It also tests how well can you take a test, which is its own skill. I cannot remove that testing for that latter thing. If I could, it would be a very different test. But so as long as that's part of the exam, you might as well learn how to take a test better, which is if you see points, be greedy about the points you can get. Go after the points you know you can get. So here, right, we've got this file. So def. So what we're going to do is that we've got this def remove emails from file name. And you know what I will also do, and I'll also put the file, and I'll put output name. Okay, so there's our two file names. Input file, I'll call it, I'll even match it better up. Input name, and output name, right? Makes sense? So I'll go ahead and provide what I'm taking in as the input and what I'm taking in as the output, what I want my input and outputs to be. Okay, so we know how to read a file already. We say our data is equal to, or whatever, or text maybe, doesn't really matter. I'll go with text right here, or I'll go with data. Yeah. Data is equal to input, so open, input name, R. Okay, congratulations, we've read the file, or rather we've loaded up the file, and then we can say text is equal to data.read, because we're just going to read the entire contents of the file and dump it into a string, right? We're not going to go line by line here. That's the regular expressions job. You can do this without regular expressions. It's just a right pain in the butt, okay? Okay, so that's 5 points there. Let's get the other 5 points of remembering how to write a file, which your book goes over. I didn't do so in class because it's not too difficult, but one thing we can do is fairly straightforward. Open, output name, and then we're going to, so we do that. Basically, we open the file we want to write to, and I mentioned this in passing, but this is, again, how we do it. We write to the file. Write creates a new file. It will overwrite anything you've already created with that file name. So, don't do it to System32 if you're on Windows. And then I'll just call it out. That creates basically a file object, basically a kind of abstract representation of what a file is in a variable. Okay? 2 more lines. Out.write. And this basically dumps text into a file, into a file. It dumps a string into a file. And we're just going to go for a one-for-one copy right now, which is text. We'll do text right now. Makes sense. And then this last line, if you leave it off, you might lose a point at most. You do need it, but it's like one of the more unimportant things. Out.close. This tells the file, the file that the computer we're actually done with the file. Please make sure you've actually written everything to the file. And that basically just finishes writing to the file. Okay? And that's it. That's another 5 points right there. Out is equal to open, write it to the file, close it. Let's go ahead and test this. Def, we're going to go ahead and do remove emails, input name, and the input file's name in this case was input1.txt for me. You can test it on anything, on any kind of file that you do have here. Input1.txt, and test. I'll call it test because I don't want to overwrite anything else. What is going on over here? Oh, silly me, I put a def. I don't want to do a def there. Just want to do that. Okay. And now run it. And now, unlike other programs, when you do this, you're not going to get a message on your console that you finished. Instead, you're going to have to look for where your file is. And notice over here I have this test without a file extension because I forgot to put a file extension on. But if we open it up, this file wasn't there on my computer before, and it is an exact replica of the file I had. And we can test that this is not the same file that I opened up by going out.write, and I can write just a little bit more. Write a new line. This part, don't bother copying this part down. This is not the important part. This is just kind of me demonstrating. Hi, Mom. Okay, and there we go. And now if we open up test again, we can see it overwrote the previous contents and added hi, Mom there. Okay. So there you go. That's another easy 5 points right there. Reading and writing a file is really easy. It's really trivial because basically anything that you'd want, because if you're ever in doubt, all you have to do is just store your answer as a string, concatenate it, keep concatenating your answers to a string, and just have a single line that writes all the giant string to the file. And it being a giant string, well, that's Python's problem. Okay. If you worried about the efficiency of efficiency and that kind of stuff, you'd be using a different language. Python's plenty efficient. Okay, so now the question is, how do we actually do this in this part with the regular expressions? Well, before we get into writing the actual pattern we need, we'll address that other point. Right? We have two other points here. We need to write a pattern that will detect the emails addresses, and then we also need to replace stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the magic line of code for regular expressions, which is re.sub, which stands for substitute. And it takes in three things: a pattern, the replacement for that pattern, and then your target. Okay? So the pattern is basically what we're looking for in this file. Okay? So in this file, let's go ahead and just simply be we're going to go ahead and just be very, not what we need, but we're going to get this working to start with. And I'm just going to say my pattern, it's the @ symbol. We're going to replace the @ symbol. Okay? And let's say that we had a much simpler question, which was, let's pretend for a second just to get this working, we had a much simpler question. We do what we see a lot of time, what a lot of professors do on their HTML web pages, which is that they don't have a full thing. They don't have the @ symbol. They have, first part of the email and then the word @ and then the other part of the email. They do that sometimes so that, a bot just can't easily scrape it. Or rather, a very dumb bot can't scrape it. Any bot can scrape that part. It's not that hard to do, but hey. So watch what I mean, and we'll see what I mean by that. @ we'll just create the word, we'll replace the symbol @ with the word @ and what are we replacing it in? We're replacing it in text. Now, of course, you can't change strings. Right? You can't change what a string is. Anytime you alter a string, what happens? You get a new string. So I'm going to just call this out text, or you could call it new text or whatever, and that's what I'll write out instead. Make sense? So if you get to this point in the exam and you're panicking because nothing looks like it changed and you did everything right, you're most likely most likely forgot to use this. when you see that something is grayed out in the IDE like this, when something is grayed out in something like Visual Studio Code or other stuff, that's an indication that you've created a variable but have not used it. So there. And so now we'll test this out, and I'm going to change this to test.txt to create a text file. And we'll see now with this file that we've replaced all the @ symbols with Professor Rosen at gmail.com, TUG85861 at that. So we've replaced all those. So that's how the substitution function works. It's very simple. Basically, it says, here's a regular expression. Here's your what I want to replace this anything matching this regular expression with this target. I mean, and you want to make sure you're careful with that, because if you're not, of course, you just get, there you go, because and then remember, what was the dot? The dot is the wildcard card. So the wildcard character. So it said anything that matched the wildcard character, which is every single character, gets replaced with an at. This, of course, what we're going to be wanting to do, though, if you check my input-output file, is this, is redacted. That's a good way to basically say that something was removed here. Which, of course, I have to share now. It reminds me of my favorite article of all time from The Onion, which is CIA realizes black highlighter. The Onion. From 2005, CIA realizes it's been using black highlighters all these years. Almost invariably, the most crucial passages are mired by indelible black ink that renders the lines impossible to read. Why did it go on this for so long, for this far? I'm frustrated as anyone. I can't read a single thing that's been highlighted. Always gives me a laugh. It's great. Okay. Anyway. So, of course, if I just simply replace wildcard character with this, we get the same effect as that, which is just a bunch of redacted. Obviously, that did remove all the email addresses, right? But we kind of over-targeted here. Now, that fair enough. If you can do this, congratulations, you've got like 75% of the points here, because you did remember how to open a file, how to read a file, how to use regular expressions to the regex engine to replace things in a string, and how to close a file. You just kind of forgot the actual regular expressions, but hey, I'll honor my rubrics even if my rubrics aren't that great. So, or even if my rubrics aren't, they are pretty good, but they may not always, but they may be weighted in your favor, is what I'm saying here. So what we want to do is make sure we don't over-target. So let's look at what we're trying to target here. And this is so now this is the rest of the problem that I do give in the exam. All TU emails are of the following format. All TU emails are of the following format, and I give this as part of the exam. You get 2 letters, and I'm just going to list the parts sequentially here from top down. Left to right, I'm 2 letters, specifically TU, okay, that's the first part, then 1 letter, right? So mine is TUG, yours might be TUF or TUZ or something like that. Once we've got our 3 letters, the TU and the random letter, we have 5 numbers. Okay? So I'll put mine up here as an example so we can follow along. TUG85861. That is actually my email. Andrew.Rosen is merely the alias for this. Okay? You can set up your own alias. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. You can have like 5 of them, So they're very useful, especially if you want to basically say, this is my name. It's a pretty easy way to just declare what your name is. So TU, 1 letter, 5 numbers, and then we have the @ symbol. And then, of course, we have, this part's always the same, temple.edu. So when we are approaching something like this with a regular expression, okay? When we see something like this with a regular expression, or we're trying to solve it with a regular expression, we should either go left to right and work on it that way, or we go right to left, and just work on it in one direction rather than trying to solve the entire thing at once. Make sense to everybody? So what are we going to do? Do we want to go left to right or right to left? It doesn't actually matter. Any preference to go which way people want to go? Left to right? Okay. So first thing we'll do is we've got to tackle the TU part. TU is fairly easy, right? TU. And now we can just test that very easily by running this. And we'll note that any TU in this is replaced by redacted. Doing good so far, right? The next part is that we need 1 letter. 1 letter. Now, this is always going to be undercase, which is great and useful for us. So we have a few ways we could do this. This would overcatch things, but it would catch what we need. But it'd be very rare that this would actually catch something that wasn't this. And remember, this /w is for the character class for basically any letter or number. That's a bit over-aggressive because we don't need numbers or underscores here. But hey, it would work. Let's see. Oh, that's the input, not the output. There we go. And now we notice that we've grabbed the TU letter part. Now, there's more than one way to do this. Just like a lot of things in programming, there's more than one way. You can make your own character class and do this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, except that's rather silly, right? Doing like this, going 1 letter at a time and just making a character class for all the possible letters. Fortunately, there's a shortcut, a very beautiful shortcut in regular expressions, right? Again, I'm approaching this not as though you would be able to solve this what you know, but using this as a teaching example. And that's actually fairly kind of understandable what that does. It's TU and then anything from A to Z. The dash means A through Z over here, right? So anything from A to Z, awesome, will get replaced. Same effect. Next, we have 5 numbers. And we've learned what the class for numbers were. It was the /d character, right? For any number, we can use /d, 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 /d. We've got 5 of those. Wait, I have to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 5? Was it 5? Oh no, you're right. I'm going back and forth and having to remember and then having to recount. That's always annoying, right? Fortunately, there's another shortcut there. This works, by the way, doing 5 in a row like this. Works perfectly fine. We're at redacted at temple.edu. If I'm grading your exam and I get this, I'm like, that's pretty good. It's not everything I needed, but hey, you did pretty good. There's another shortcut we can do, which is the quantifier. /d. And this one is fair, and then we use the curly braces. The curly braces are those weird keys that if you hit shift bracket, that's what it gets you them. The curly braces, because they're weird and curly. And 5. You can guess what that means. That means 5 of the preceding character, right? Remember how we could do at least 1, at least 0. If you want to be specific, you can use the quantifier. In fact, you can use the quantifier with a comma, like at least, between 3 and 5 inclusive. But right now, don't worry about that. 5. Exactly 5. Again, if you want it, I highly recommend reading through that chapter, reading through the stuff on regexer.com. Regexer.com is something you're allowed to use on the exam, by the way, because guess what? It's linked. I've linked to it in Canvas somewhere, pretty sure. So TU, A through Z, slash D, 5. And this gets all 5 of those numbers. Boom. And now the at temple.edu, fairly straightforward. At temple.edu. Yes, we have a dot here. I'll address that in a second. And we get that. Yep. So here's the pattern. Here we are taking this pattern and we are substituting anything that matches that pattern with redacted. Okay? And this will just simply return a new string that that enforces that, and then we write that out to a file. All told, this problem takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines of code. 7 lines, that's it. 5 of which are super easy for you to memorize, right? I mean, you already know how to read a file. Then these 3 over here to write a file, not too bad, right? It's not like you have to memorize it too. You've got like access to your notes. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Swear. Okay. Take the points that I give you, please. Okay. And finally, we do have one thing we have to address to make this a completely correct answer. Remember, the dot is a wildcard character. If we want to specify the actual dot itself, we have to escape it. To say it's a period. And there we go. That catches this. It catches these over here. And now the reason I have this over here is, and I don't want you to remove it, is because I also wanted to make sure that it was a bit more trivial than writing this, right? I wanted it to be a bit more trivial than writing /w plus, which would have just been, whoops, okay. I accidentally closed that, not run it. Keys are so close to each other. They're really not, but. Okay, and there we go. Oh, there you go. So that would give us something, it would have grabbed a bit more than I wanted it to. So this grabs everything I want, but leaves everything that I don't want, is kind of the idea here. Right, that's kind of, right, remember, it's very trivially easy to remove all Social Security numbers from any amount of text by just simply deleting all the text, because you've deleted all the Social Security numbers. So, and this is the kind of solution, and that is also kind of, if it's not specified, that is always the kind of solution you should reach for, a very simple one that, yes, it's outside the box, it's totally what they wanted, but when it comes to personal identifying information, being a bit aggressive is sometimes the right approach. Okay, so yes, that kind of question is definitely going to be on the exam, on the final exam, and it will be something along the lines of maybe either removing a kind of national ID number, like I'll look up the maybe I'll look up the way the Canadian national numbers are formatted, or the numbers in the UK or France. Doesn't really matter what country. Or maybe I'll look up health insurance information, right? Or I'll look up something, right, that will be able to be, that will require you to be able to use regular expressions. Or will not require, just become, you get the point that this is a lot more difficult if you're just simply doing a for loop over this thing. Okay? That's kind of the idea here, is that's a lot more difficult. Now, before I move on, I do want to point out, why am I bothering talking about this? Seems a bit like it's not in your Runestone textbook, right? So why? Well, if you press Control, if you're in VS Code here, just go ahead and press Control F or Command F, and you'll notice a little box over here, that find replace box. You're familiar with it. You've used it 1.5 million times anywhere. You've used it a lot. But have you ever checked this out? Have you ever checked these little symbols over here? No, because people don't read their stuff, of course. which is that's okay. Get into the habit of reading the little things that pop up on computers. You should know them. This one says match case, which basically says go from case insensitive to sensitive. This one says match whole word, so only look for this, don't look for substrings. And then the final one, which has the dot and the star, which is kind of the universal symbol for it, says use regular expressions. That's right, it's built into VS Code. In fact, it's built into pretty much anything. Let's go over here. Is it built into here? Control F. Not over here, no. But basically regex are built into, I don't know. I feel like they're built into Excel by now and Word. They've got to be at this point. But like basically any text editor that you're using is going to have it built in. Maybe not idle because it's a bit bare boned. Every programming language is going to have it. If we go over here to the Java string API, yes, I know you're in Python, not Java, but let's go ahead and check this out over here in string. These are kind of all the methods, all the arguments you can do with strings over here. If we look for regex over here, we've got match regex, which takes in a regex. Over here, we've got replace all for a string. Replace all, which takes in a regular expression. The split takes in a regular expression in Java, so that's kind of useful. Python string functions. Right, if we look over here in the docs for, this is 2, documentation for the common string regex. Do we have regular? Nope. Doesn't really use regular expressions here, I don't think. Oh, let's go and see. Invalid. So placeholder syntax. So there are things built in for it. Delimiter, note should not be a regular expression. Over here, this regular expression will find stuff. Flags, regular expression flags. So it goes over this kind of things, right? So it's kind of built into features in most modern programming languages. Okay. All right. So before I let you go, let's go ahead and take a look at some more of those questions over here. Okay. Modules. Sorry, assignments. Also, again, if the mystery question is kind of stressing you out, I will point out that the vast majority of people who attempt it get at least 80% of the credit. Most of them get all of the credit. It's not, if you try it, it's one of those that I love because it works as a test question. It just really works. Okay. All right, so going over here. All right, so let's go over here to these to some of these questions. So first off, that dot star. Anybody kind of have an idea of what that is, dot star at this point? Anyone? I mentioned it's the kind of universal symbol for regular expressions. So let's take it one at a time. What's a dot? What's the dot character do for regular expressions? Sorry? Wildcard. Yeah, exactly right. And what's the star? We called it the clean star. K-L-E-E-N-E. Clean star. What other symbol did I associate it with? I associated it with the plus mark, with the plus sign, which was at least one of. So the clean star is at least zero. At least zero. That's right. So this any character at least zero of them. This basically matches anything. That matches basically everything. So it's asking you what's the difference between this and the difference between if I put a question mark on it. which is a very common question. You should be able to Google that, fairly straightforward. All right. So let's take a look at this. One other one thing you might find useful going through this file, by the way, is there's one more regular expression character class that I did not mention. It's a really good one, though. Really good one. And let's see if it's built in here. Okay, which is /b. Warning. Why is it giving me a warning? Warning, no match in those characters. /b, and then let's go with a single, and A to Z. Okay. So what is /b? /b is a boundary character, like a space, or the start or end of a string. So it can be very useful for basically what is what separates things. Let's see, does it include commas? Yes, it does. Basically anything that a boundary character would be, so basically it says, here's a word boundary, and then followed by a single character. So it can be very useful here. So if I wanted to match, so here let's look at this one. Number 4. Do more words end in ing or ion? Okay? So let's go ahead and, so for this we'll need 2 regular expressions that are going to be very, very, very simple. One that matches all words that end with ing, and one that matches all words with ion. Make sense? So regular expression 1 should look something like this. Any letter, A to Z, although since we're dealing with some letters that are capitalized, we can do that too. A to Z or A to Z. In fact, I think it's A to Z works for every letter. A to lowercase z, right? All the capitals through all the lowercases. We need any number of those characters. So notice now it's matching all the words. And then ing for all the words that end with ing. Like being, or eating, or sleeping. Sensation. Okay? To match all the words that end with ion, we go and look for this one. ION. All the words that end with ION. Make sense? So, you can do that regular expression, and there's a couple ways you can do that in your program. You can read through the file, test one word at a time, or you can test all those. All right. I think I am okay with ending class early today. Everybody, that sound good to everybody? All right. So next week I plan on starting our review. So we'll be going over multiple practice questions. The last thing I'll mention is also, since tomorrow is the beginning of December, which means that Advent of Code opens up. So if you're feeling adventurous, I would recommend taking a look at this, the Advent of Code over here. Advent of Code, it does basically very Christmas-themed programming puzzles. Basically, in the past years, it's been along the lines of Santa needs your help to save Christmas, and only you can help because you can code. Okay.
I have a question for one of the questions.
Yep. Let me stop recording here.